Howdy y'all, and welcome back to Feaker Studios. Join me as I walk you through how I made this 1/35th scale diorama depicting an American armored assault in the final days of World War II. I got the itch to make a diorama of a Sherman tank following my experience in The Tank from Fury. I'm a fan of the film as it embodies many of the battle-worn thematic and aesthetic elements that compose my artistic style. I keep finding myself rewatching the scene of the assault on the anti-tank gun line for its drama, gritty atmosphere, production design, and escalating tension. I wanted to capture that tension of an assault underway, featuring a Sherman festooned with stowage and battle damage, conducting joint operations with fatigued infantry. I was also inspired to include a railroad element by the rail yard assault from Kelly's Heroes. This would pay tribute to that film, represent my model railroad hobby, and the rail embankment would serve the composition by elevating the tank. Literally. I decided to depict the 2nd Armored Division because this is the unit depicted in Fury, as well as Band of Brothers' tank assault scene.
Well, hello, 2nd Armored.
And the 2nd's nickname of Hell on Wheels was another railroad tribute and quite apt for my story. One of my formative inspirations in modeling was Shepard Payne's book, How to Build Dioramas. His mantra was that a diorama should depict a subject doing its thing, and one of the examples was that a diorama of an assault tank should, well, show the assault tank assaulting. I chose the assaultiest of all Shermans, the M4A3E2, nicknamed Jumbo post-war, in lieu of Fury's Easy 8. The Jumbo was more thickly armored than an Easy 8, and this gave me more wiggle room to plausibly depict extreme battle damage that was severe enough to make a heavy mark, but not enough to knock out the tank. For my kit, I went with Meng's 1/35th scale model for its superb detail and to challenge myself as a modeler. I also got this Tamiya Sherman on eBay for dirt cheap, giving me even more stowage options and figures for the infantry. The guy with the BAR really clinched that deal for me, but spoiler alert, I found these Tamiya figures way too big. I instead went with these resin infantry models from a brand I'd never heard of before, Paracel Miniatures, and thought they fit my aesthetic perfectly, so I drafted them into service. Other purchases include a Tamiya weapon set, a CMK tank commander, and a Panzer Art resin stowage set. Let's get this assault underway. Because the Meng Jumbo is quite the kit, I started with the infantry. Well, if you know me, I can't help but fiddle and customize and tinker, and these infantry were no exception. I'll walk you through how I made one of these Paracel figures. The figures come out of the box fairly decently for resin figures. There are some warped and damaged parts, and other holes that needed filling. That's just part of the joy of resin models. The biggest pain though was the trench coat, which comes as a solid cast, so I had to carve out a good chunk of the material to get the right look. The left hand was also missing a thumb, but thankfully I found an organ donor in my bits box. Right away, I decided that a rifleman with an M1 Garand wasn't exactly what I wanted. I, of course, needed a figure with a BAR. I checked my bits box for a replacement hand, then decided that I liked the look of the original gloved hand too much, and then opted to carve out the rifle from the hand. I then equipped him with a BAR from my bits box. Our gunner needed to change his gear to match his new loadout. I carved away the Garand rifle pouches and used styrene strips and BAR magazine pouches to give him the proper equipment. While I was at it, I also used styrene to make a helmet band for the goggles I would later give him. The right arm is too tight against the hip to fit a full ammo pouch, so I sculpted one using green stuff instead. You can see here where I also had to use putty to fix his flat-footedness. He then got covered in additional gear from my collection. There we go, all set and ready to tend to his BAR. The other figures also received some custom touch-ups, though nothing as severe. The Sergeant figure's resin M1 carbine was a mess, so I replaced it with a plastic version. Some filler and a revolver later, and he's ready to go. These two figures are the emotional heart of the scene, reminding the viewer of the horrors of war and camaraderie between soldiers. They are magnificent sculpts, though needed some heavy filler work to make them match up nicely. The joys of working with resin. Wear a mask when sanding, kids. And that was the figures built. I then laid them out with the Sherman chassis to experiment with composition. Okay, mount up, recruits, it's tank time. And right away, I decided not to torture myself with making the tracks individually link by link. Thank goodness they also included a decent rubber alternative. However, I did go with the individual duckbill track extenders just to keep my sanity on its toes. The bogies went together well, and the working suspension was fun to play with. I then proceeded to lose one of these front bits and had to make a replacement. I built it mostly out of the box, plus a metal gun barrel to depict it as the 76mm equipped version.
This gun is an ordinary 76mm, but we add this piece of pipe onto it, and the crowds think like maybe it's a 90mm. Scares the hell out of people.
The Panzer Art stowage is fantastic. No cleanup work needed out of the box, except it didn't fit flush on the engine deck. Darn. I shaved down all the protruding details and used some putty to fill any remaining gaps, like where this blanket roll has to rest against the headlight at a weird angle. There we go. I forget which kit this is from, but this cardboard box includes cutout boxes, which went together okay. I wouldn't bother with these next time. I don't have great pics of adding battle damage, but here we can see some that I did. I followed the night shift technique of using files and drill bits to carve the damage, then applying plastic putty to add the warped metal effect. I also had to use filler on the lower and upper turret half seam line, and then touch it up with a sponge to restore the cast metal effect. My initial plan was to include a Flak 38 being run over, as a tribute to the flak guns from Kelly's Heroes and Saving Private Ryan, but in the end I wasn't happy with the composition, so I left it out. 2 more figures. The tank commander came together beautifully, no notes. I wanted a soldier manning the 50 cal, and worked on converting a tanker from a mini art set into an infantryman. I gave him an M1 Garand with a grenade launcher, suitable pockets, a photo etch rifle sling, and did a lot of fiddling to get him sitting right. Because of the odd angles that he's contacting the tank at, I chose to assemble him in situ, with the turret suitably locked in place as well. Thankfully, this didn't complicate painting. Here's the diorama so far, having a West Side Story moment with another diorama I was working on at the time. Let me know in the comments if you're interested in the story of that diorama as well. I wasn't done with stowage yet, and added some musette bags with photo etch straps around the turret. I made additional stowage as well, which I kept separate for painting purposes. I primed in black with a white zenith, and then took 0 photos of me applying the olive drab paint. Flash forward, here it is with decals and an oil wash applied. I went with the name Erebus as a tribute to the Franklin expedition. Here's a montage of me trying layering effects with the commander. I'm trying to balance definition with subtlety, and pleased with what I ended up with. I then swapped the color palettes from the infantry and painted the rest of the figures in a similar way. I used these Passion model decals for my figures. They really bring the final look together. I like the big Brooklyn, New York decal that's clearly a tribute to Ryven from Saving Private Ryan. Time for the train tracks. These are also for mini art, I believe. They have great detail, though honestly the individual spike heads were something I could live without. With that done, I turned to final diorama composition, using foam board as a base. I tried to go with a smaller footprint to heighten the focus on the figures. I liked the effect of the raised rail roadbed and thought it would pair great with the tank's working suspension. But the tank isn't actually heavy enough to put the suspension to work. I tried adding weights to the hull, but I ended up having to force the effect by gluing the tracks and suspension in place. I built up the base with Sculptamold and glued the train tracks. The tracks meet the diorama edge at an angle, so I cut them accordingly and sealed the gaps with styrene. I then added balsa wood to make a neat, tidy frame. Whoops, I forgot that the balsa wood would extend the size of the base, and now the train tracks end prematurely, so I had to rebuild the sections I had just cut off using balsa wood and styrene. Much better. Vallejo earth texture was then applied to add a texture, and the base was primed black. I must say, painting 1/35th scale track is much easier than N scale. I added a mud effect to the ground, then ballasted the tracks. I used pastels to add dust to the ballast and the rails, and a graphite pencil to polish the rail tops. I had some open space to fill here, so I used leftover track pieces to make a pile of scraps. Then mud, mud, and mud. And I attached the tank while the mud was still wet so it would sink in. I tried using the tank treads to make an impression on the mud, but it wasn't quite working, so I instead sculpted the tread marks with a toothpick. With the manhandling of the tank done, I added the more delicate pieces of stowage I'd made earlier, then added mud effects to the tank. I really like the look that flicking a brush to spray mud all over gives the tank. The last step was to add a touch of war with Blood for the Blood God, a chilling but realistic blood effect. And with that, the diorama is finished, and let me leave you with this final presentation.
All right, let's get the boys off. Get them off. Give me last man.
Button up.
Everybody out! Form in! Guys, keep an eyeball on that high ground. Right.
115 copies, Wilco.
Watch that tree line right there. Hold that, hold that. You're on. No further jump. Catch up.
Heads on tank, 18.
Got it! Empty tank, 18, traverse right, 800. Steady, on.
Fire!
Down 15. On! Fire! What?
Target destroyed.
Okay, ceasefire, ceasefire.
115 copies, Wilco.
Where the hell did they come from?
All tanks, hold here. Get your boys in the fight!
Let go, McGrath, on me! Shift your fire right! God damn it! Timber, take leave, guns, start clearing these buildings! Right, we need some cover and fire, ready? Down fire, McGrath! Fire!
Joe,
Looking good, Tip.
and you?
You're looking real good. Come here, buddy. You gotta sit down. Come here. Come on. Easy, easy. There you go. There you go. Oh, Jesus. Hang in there, buddy. Okay, we're gonna get you fixed up, all right? Okay.